I bought a luxury mansion as a gift for my son and daughter-in-law, with just one condition: a small room for myself. But on the very night of the housewarming, they locked my door, cut the heating, and quietly installed surveillance cameras to watch me like a criminal. If you think this is just another family drama, you're dead wrong. Subscribe now to follow more haunting stories like this one. The snow hadn't stopped for 3 days. It clung to the creaking rooftop of the mountain cabin, wrapped itself around the naked branches of the pines, blanketed the narrow stone path like a silencer. Outside, wind howled in long, hollow sighs, an orchestra of winter's loneliness. Inside, Eleanor Bates stood in the dimming orange of the late afternoon light, surrounded by cardboard boxes, open suitcases, and remnants of a life that was slowly being folded away. She wasn't crying. She hadn't cried in years, not even when Harold passed. Her gnarled fingers tugged slowly at the tape roll, sealing shut another box marked cookbooks and linens. Her eyes of faded blue lingered on a wooden chair tucked into the corner, carved decades ago by Harold himself. She had once hated that chair. It creaked every time he leaned back, which he did during every meal without fail. Now it felt like a monument. A gust of wind slammed against the window panes. She flinched. There on the mantel above the fireplace sat a photo frame wrapped in dust and memories. Eleanor wiped it clean with the edge of her woolen sleeve. Inside, captured in sun-bleached color, was the trio herself, Harold, and a 10-year-old Amanda laughing beside a half-burnt marshmallow over a campfire. Harold had his arm around both of them like always, like a lighthouse in a storm. She traced his face with her thumb. 40 years, she whispered to the empty room. Her voice cracked not from emotion, but from disuse. 40 winters had come and gone through this cabin. It was where Amanda had taken her first steps, where Harold had nursed her through pneumonia, where birthdays, anniversaries, and snowed-in Thanksgivings had passed in the glow of the stone hearth. It was where Harold had died in that armchair by the fire, fingers still curled around the handle of his favorite mug, steam still rising when she found him. But the taxes had climbed higher every year. The roof needed mending. The insulation had given out. Amanda had called it a relic more lovingly than it sounded. Tyler had suggested they sell it just casually over Thanksgiving dinner. "You could stay with us, Mom," Amanda had added, trying to sound like she hadn't rehearsed it. Eleanor had said yes that same night. Now the deed was signed. The buyers, a young couple from Denver with matching Patagonia jackets, were coming in the morning. Eleanor wouldn't be here. She finished sealing the last box and lowered herself onto the edge of the love seat. It groaned beneath her weight. Her knees ached. She let her eyes drift back to the photo on the mantel. Harold had been gone 7 years, long enough to stop dreaming about him. Not long enough to stop talking to him, though. "Well, sweetheart," she said, clearing her throat. "We're going to the city." A knock on the door broke the silence. Then came the sound of tires crunching over snow outside. Eleanor opened the door to Amanda, wrapped in a sleek black coat, makeup flawless despite the wind. Tyler followed behind, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Mom," Amanda exclaimed, brushing snow from her hair as she entered. "You packed everything." "I did." "Wow," Amanda said, looking around. "It's smaller than I remembered." Eleanor let the comment float past. Tyler leaned in and gave her a quick, courteous hug. "We've got the back seats down, lots of room in the SUV. You're all set, Eleanor." She forced a smile and nodded. "Thank you, Tyler." Amanda picked up the photo frame from the mantel. "Still holding on to this old thing?" she asked playfully. Eleanor stepped forward, took it gently from her hands, and tucked it into her handbag. Some things don't get old. The drive down the mountain was quiet. Snow blurred the windshield. The silence filled only with the soft drone of the heater and Amanda's occasional small talk about the cafe. They were opening a second location. Tyler had convinced her to invest. They were calling it Juniper and Sage, modern, earthy, full of plants and overpriced pour-overs. "We couldn't have done it without your help, Mom," Amanda said. "That cabin money really made the difference. I hope you know how grateful we are." "Of course," Eleanor replied. "You'll love the house. Your room's got a window that faces the garden, and there's a little reading chair just like you wanted." "It's all I need," Eleanor murmured. Amanda reached back and squeezed her hand. "We're family. We take care of each other." The city lights came into view, scattered jewels against a steel-gray sky. As they pulled into the suburban cul-de-sac, Eleanor noticed how quiet it was. All the houses looked the same. Theirs had a plastic reindeer in the yard, its nose glowing red. Amanda flicked the remote, and the garage door groaned open. Inside the house smelled new fresh paint, clean carpets, and the faint scent of sandalwood candles. Eleanor's room was at the very end of a long, straight hallway. A single window faced a patch of fenced-in grass. A twin bed had been made neatly with a gray quilt. A nightstand sat beside it with a small lamp and a coaster. "We figured this would be best," Amanda said, placing one of the boxes on the bed. "Far enough from the kitchen that you won't hear us when we're working late." Tyler stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "Nice and quiet down here." "Yes," Eleanor said, "very quiet." Amanda gave her a hug. "We'll let you settle in. Dinner's at 6. Just ring the little bell if you need anything. It's on the nightstand." They left and the door closed with a soft but final click. Eleanor looked around. No photos on the walls, no bookshelves, no fireplace. She sat on the edge of the bed and opened the top box. Inside were her books, Austen Dickinson Baldwin, the pages worn from decades of use. Beneath them lay the small clock Harold had given her one Christmas engraved with her initials. She placed it on the nightstand. Tick, tick. The sound echoed in the stillness. Later at dinner, the table was set for 3. Tyler was talking about business permits. Amanda was scrolling through her phone. Eleanor sipped soup from a white ceramic bowl and nodded politely. No one asked about the cabin. Afterward, she returned to her room. She changed into her nightgown, brushed her teeth, and turned off the lamp. The dark closed in around her, heavy and unfamiliar. Outside, the snow fell harder, and from the hallway, barely audible, came the soft, mechanical whir of a camera adjusting its lens. The clock in Eleanor's room ticked with a rhythm too perfect. No creak, no hesitation. It ticked like it belonged to someone else's life. She opened her eyes slowly to the soft, indirect light pushing through the curtains. Morning in Denver wasn't the same as the mountains. There the sun pierced through pine branches, golden and wild. Here it filtered through frosted glass and thick blinds, cool and sterile. Eleanor sat up in the twin bed sheets tucked too tightly. Her bones ached like they always did in winter, but there was something else pressing on her chest, something heavier than age. She sat at the edge of the bed for a long moment, hands on her knees, listening. The house was quiet, almost suspiciously so. She dressed slowly, layer by layer, sweater over flannel, thick socks over brittle skin. Outside her door, the hallway stretched on like a tunnel. No sound of footsteps, no scent of coffee. Only that humming quiet that felt more like a museum than a home. In the kitchen, she found a sticky note on the fridge in Amanda's handwriting. "Mom, Tyler, and I had to head to the cafe early. Lily's at school. There's soup in the fridge. Back around 6. XO-A." Eleanor peeled the note slowly from the fridge door and held it in her palm. Then she folded it and placed it in her sweater pocket. She didn't know why. The soup stayed in the fridge. Instead, she boiled water and made herself a cup of English breakfast. No milk, no honey, just steam curling from the surface. She carried the mug to the sunroom, if it could be called that. It was a small corner by the back patio with a single chair and a thin cushion facing a window that overlooked a fenced backyard layered in frost. An artificial bird feeder swung gently from a hook outside, untouched. Eleanor settled into the chair, hands wrapped around the cup for warmth. The tea was too hot. She didn't sip. She watched. Snowflakes floated downward like falling ash, indifferent and beautiful. Time passed. It always did. An hour, maybe more. The sound of the front door jolted her. Then footsteps, light, fast, familiar. The door creaked open. "Nana, Lily." Eleanor smiled before she turned around. "In here," she called softly. Lily, all of 10 years old and bursting with motion, came into the room like spring. Her cheeks were pink from the cold hair, still in pigtails from school backpack, half unzipped and trailing colored pens behind her. "You're awake," Lily said, as if surprised. "I am," Eleanor said, raising an eyebrow. Lily plopped onto the floor at her feet, crossing her legs. "Mom said I could sit with you for a bit before dinner. She and Dad are checking the new espresso machine." "Oh," Eleanor said, "of course they are." "I brought a book," Lily added brightly. "The one with the sea otters." Eleanor nodded. "The one we didn't finish last time." Lily pulled it from her backpack, settled herself into a cozy ball on the floor, and began to read aloud. Eleanor closed her eyes and listened. It wasn't just the words that mattered. It was the sound of Lily's voice, clear, certain, musical. It was the way she paused for breath, the way she lingered on funny phrases, the way she laughed at her own reading and then caught herself. For 20 minutes the house felt alive. Then the front door opened again. Lily froze. Tyler's voice, casual but unmistakably loud, floated through the hall. "Babe, did you already warm up the Thai leftovers? I could eat the table." Amanda responded, muffled. Lily glanced up at her grandmother. Eleanor offered her a small smile. "Go on, darling. Help with dinner." Lily looked reluctant, but she nodded. "We'll read more later, always." The girl scurried out, leaving her bookmark, an old bus ticket, pressed between the pages. Eleanor stayed seated. Her tea was cold now. She drank it anyway. That night, dinner was more muted than usual. Tyler talked numbers. Second location's actually ahead of projection, he was saying between mouthfuls. "We're thinking of switching bean suppliers. The ones from Oregon have better branding. It's about perception, really." Amanda nodded. "And the barista course I signed up for." Eleanor tuned them out. The vegetables on her plate had no seasoning. Her fork scraped the ceramic. "And maybe after tax season we can look at refinancing." That snapped her attention back. She glanced up. Refinancing. Tyler didn't miss a beat. "Oh, just an idea. With the equity from this house and the business assets, we could get a better rate. Lower interest, better cash flow." Amanda jumped in quickly. "Of course we'd talk to you first, Mom. It's just early thinking." "Of course," Eleanor echoed, setting her fork down. No one spoke for a moment. Then Tyler chuckled and raised his glass. "To family, right?" Eleanor met his eyes. Something hard and cold passed between them like ice cracking in a glass. "To family," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Later that night, as Amanda loaded the dishwasher and Tyler disappeared into the home office, Eleanor stood in the hallway staring at the door to her room. It was closed, but there was something about it. Something in the way it rested in the frame. She reached for the handle. It turned freely. She stepped inside. Everything as she left it. Quiet, still. She turned the lamp on, and in its warm pool of light, she noticed a new object on the dresser. A pamphlet. Eleanor picked it up. Silver Pines Assisted Living, Comfort Community Care. Inside were photos of cheerful old women doing crafts, a game room with a piano, smiling staff members with plastic name tags. A small handwritten note clipped to the corner read, "Just to keep in mind for the future. Love, A." Eleanor stood very still. She turned pamphlets still in hand and looked around her room. The plain walls, the window with no view, the single chair, the ticking clock. A box, she realized. A smaller box than the cabin, but a box all the same. She folded the pamphlet slowly, placed it back where it had been, and turned off the light. But that night she couldn't sleep. Voices floated through the vent in the ceiling. Amanda and Tyler speaking low, urgent. Eleanor pressed her ear close. "Doesn't really do much, just sits all day." "I know, but it's not like we can just—" "Well, the house is in her name. We'll figure it out." Eleanor sat back slowly. Her room felt smaller than ever. In the morning, she ate breakfast alone. Amanda and Tyler had left early again. Lily was off to school. No one had said goodbye. The dishwasher still had clean dishes inside. She emptied it without being asked. By 10 a.m., she sat again in the sunroom book unopened in her lap, tea untouched on the side table. The snow had started again, heavier this time. The bird feeder outside had finally drawn a single finch. It pecked furiously, then flew away. From behind she heard a click. She turned. No one was there. But above the doorway, so subtle she had never noticed before, was a black glass dome. A camera. Her eyes narrowed. She stood, walked to the hallway, looked up. Another dome. She followed the hallway back into the living room, her heart now thudding. Over the bookshelf, over the front door, above the kitchen counter. 3 cameras, maybe more. No signs, no blinking lights, just presence. She walked back to her room, shut the door behind her, and leaned against it. Her hands were trembling now, just slightly. This wasn't a home. It was a cage. She sat down at the edge of the bed and stared at the nightstand where the pamphlet still lay like a promise she hadn't made. Outside, the snow fell in silence. Inside, Eleanor was beginning to wake up. It was close to midnight when Eleanor opened her eyes. She wasn't sure what had stirred her. Maybe it was the hum of the heat vent clicking off. Maybe it was the silence afterward, heavy, like a sealed vault. She lay still for a few seconds, staring up at the faint ceiling. Shadows shifted slowly across the room, thrown by the street lamp beyond the window blinds. She sat up, reaching for her robe, knotting it with quiet fingers. Her mouth was dry. Tea. She needed tea. Something warm to calm the unease gnawing inside her. She shuffled across the floor and reached for the doorknob. It didn't turn. She frowned, tried again. The knob moved slightly, but the door refused to open. She pulled harder. Nothing. Locked. From the outside. Her breath caught. She leaned in, pressed her ear to the door. No sound. No footsteps. Nothing but the cold realization sinking in like a slow, cruel tide. She tapped softly, then knocked. Still nothing. Her eyes scanned the room. No phone, no intercom, no bell. She returned to the bed and sat, pulse rising. This wasn't an accident. Amanda never mentioned locking the door. There was no conversation about safety. She hadn't locked it herself, she was sure. And then she noticed it just above the door, tucked neatly into the corner of the ceiling. A small black dome, glossy, watching. She rose slowly, approached it, her breath fogging in the air. It blinked. Not a light, just the faintest flicker, like a lens adjusting in the dark. Eleanor stepped back, the back of her knees hitting the edge of the bed. She swallowed hard. Her fingers curled tightly around the fabric of her robe. The room was not just locked, it was surveilled. And then her mind raced hallways, kitchen entryway. That same dark glass dome, the ones she noticed before. How many had she missed? How long had they been there? Who was watching? Amanda or Tyler? The walls felt narrower now, the air colder. Her heart drummed in her ears. She didn't sleep that night. She lay on the bed with her eyes open, listening. Imagining red lights glowing behind the walls, imagining files being saved somewhere, her movements catalogued, each sigh, each step, each word whispered into the dark. At some point the hallway light flicked on, silent. Footsteps passed outside. Tyler's voice muffled but unmistakably real. She didn't even get up. Amanda's voice groggy. She's getting tired. That's good. Easier when she is. Then silence again. By morning, she was still dressed, still seated in the chair beneath the window. She hadn't moved. The sun rose, but it didn't warm her. At 8:17 a.m., the door unlocked. Click. She didn't flinch. Outside, footsteps approached, the heavy shuffle of boots across the wood floor. Then a knock at the back door. Delivery, a voice called young and chipper, breaking through the brittle morning hush. Amanda's voice echoed back. Just leave it on the porch. But the door creaked open anyway. Eleanor watched from the sunroom as Dylan stepped in, jacket dusted with snow, hands balancing a tray of drinks. He glanced around, spotted her. "Morning, Miss Bates," he said. His voice was warm, real. Eleanor nodded. "Morning, Dylan." He grinned. "Hazelnut latte for the queen of the house." Amanda appeared from the hallway. "Thanks, Dylan. You can just leave them here." Dylan hesitated for a second, then set the tray down. "Busy morning." Amanda waved a dismissive hand. "Just chaos as always. I hear the new shop's already pulling record numbers," Dylan said casually, grabbing the receipt from his back pocket. "That true?" Amanda smirked. "We've been lucky." Tyler emerged, phone pressed to his ear. "What's the rate on a 15-year fixed with balloon at maturity?" "No," I said. "Equity-backed, not interest only." Jesus, can no one get it right? He strode past without acknowledging Dylan. Eleanor's eyes stayed on him. "Busy guy," Dylan muttered once Amanda disappeared into the hallway again. Eleanor moved to the edge of the sunroom. Her voice dropped low. "Dylan," she said, "you have a minute?" He glanced toward the hallway, then back at her. "Sure." She motioned to the back patio door. "Walk with me." They stepped outside. Cold air bit her skin, but she didn't care. The snow in the yard was fresh, soft underfoot. She led him a few feet beyond the sliding glass doors before speaking. "I need to ask you something," she said, wrapping her arms around herself. "Yeah." Her eyes were direct. "Have you heard anything unusual about Tyler?" He blinked. "What kind of unusual?" She hesitated, then added financial. Dylan rubbed the back of his neck. "I mean, there's always talk. Small-town gossip stuff. Why? Tell me anyway. He looked at her. Something in her face, the brittle calm of it, told him this wasn't just curiosity. Well? He said, lowering his voice. I did hear something from Ben. He works over at the First National downtown. Said a guy matching Tyler's description came in a few weeks ago asking about bridge loans, big ones, against assets that weren't technically his. Eleanor's heart clenched. What assets? Dylan shrugged. Didn't say, but Ben said it was shady. Something about how the collateral was tied up in an older relative's name. Did he say my name? No. But Ben implied the guy didn't look like he'd inherited anything yet. Eleanor exhaled the cloud of her breath, disappearing into the winter air. He also said the guy left pissed, Dylan added. Stormed out when they asked too many questions. Was Amanda with him? Dylan shook his head, alone. Eleanor nodded slowly, eyes narrowing at a single cardinal perched on the edge of the bird feeder. You okay, Miss Bates? No, she said quietly. But I will be. Dylan waited, but she said no more. Amanda's voice called from inside. Mom. It's freezing out. What are you doing? Eleanor turned. Just getting fresh air. Amanda appeared at the door, arms crossed. Her expression flickered when she saw Dylan. Thanks again. We're good here. Dylan tipped his cap and backed toward the gate. Anytime. Eleanor stepped back inside the warmth of the house, suddenly feeling artificial. The door shut behind her, and somewhere above her another camera blinked, watching, recording. She didn't flinch this time, because now she knew, and Eleanor Bates didn't plan to be watched forever. The office was always locked, or at least it had been until that Thursday morning when Tyler forgot. The door stood ajar, a sliver of light pouring into the hallway. Eleanor had been passing by, quietly heading toward the laundry room when she noticed it. Her steps paused. Inside, papers were strewn across the desk. A printer hummed. Tyler's mug, half full and still steaming, sat beside a clutter of opened envelopes and legal pads. She hesitated, then stepped inside. Her fingers didn't tremble. Not yet. The silence of the room felt like a held breath, like walking onto thin ice. She closed the door gently behind her and moved to the desk. Manila folders. Some labeled with thick marker Juniper and Sage Phase 2 Investor Leads Tax Prep 2025. But one folder caught her attention. Her own name, Eleanor Bates, Assets. She opened it slowly. Inside, copies of documents she hadn't seen before, pages printed in fine font, highlighted in yellow with sticky notes marking lines. At first glance, they looked like refinancing applications. Eleanor leaned closer. Her eyes scanned the top of the first document. Borrower name, Eleanor M. Bates. Co-borrower, Amanda L. Bates Richmond. The loan amount, $320,000. Collateral primary residence, 55 Crestview Lane, currently occupied by applicant. Her pulse accelerated. She turned the next page, a signature field, her name written in thick black ink. Eleanor M. Bates. It looked like her handwriting, but it wasn't. She knew it instantly. The slant was wrong. The E too round the B curved the way Amanda did when she was mimicking her mother's writing in high school art projects. She flipped faster now, each page revealing more forged signatures, notary stamps, loan details. Then something worse. A letter from a private lender addressed to Tyler Richmond, thanking him for his creative solution to securing equity without probate delays. She gasped. The printer on the desk sprang to life, spitting out a sheet. She backed away instinctively. Footsteps, voices approaching, Tyler's low murmur, Amanda's sharper reply. Eleanor grabbed her phone hand, steady now with fury, and snapped quick photos of the first 5 pages. She didn't have time for more. The office doorknob turned. She shoved the folder back, slammed the drawer shut, and slipped out through the opposite hallway just as Tyler entered. She ducked into the laundry room and closed the door, leaning back against it, heart thudding in her ears. Outside, she heard Tyler's voice rise. Why the hell was the office open? Amanda replied, her tone taut. You left it open, not me. I didn't. He paused. Was she out here? Your mother? How would I know I was making Lily's lunch? A pause. Then Tyler again, sharper. We can't leave this kind of thing lying around. Amanda sighed. Well, maybe if we didn't have this much to hide. Keep your voice down, he snapped. Eleanor sank slowly to the floor, eyes shut tight. Later that afternoon, the storm inside the house exploded. She was reading with Lily in the sunroom when she heard the shouting start. Amanda's voice cut through the walls like a blade. She walks around like she owns the place. It's suffocating. She does own it, Tyler shot back. Technically. Well, maybe that was your genius plan, have us all live under the roof of a 76-year-old ghost. She's not a ghost. She's leverage. Eleanor closed the book in Lily's lap gently. Sweetheart, why don't you go finish this in your room? Lily looked worried. Are they fighting? No, Eleanor lied. They're just talking loud. She kissed her forehead and watched her go. From her place in the hall just beyond sight, she listened. You said this would be temporary, Amanda hissed. That we'd sell or flip or refinance. We still can, Tyler said, but only if she doesn't catch on. Well, she's been wandering into rooms she shouldn't. You need to handle that. Amanda laughed bitterly. She's my mother, not a toddler. Then act like it. A door slammed. Silence followed. That night, Eleanor sat at her nightstand, her phone in her hand, the screen glowing dimly. She didn't have many people left to call, but one name kept coming back, Dylan. Not because he owed her anything, but because he was decent, honest, and above all, not part of this house. The next morning, she waited for his delivery. When he finally arrived, 2 lattes in hand and a smile that faded the moment he saw her face, she asked him quietly, Could you help me with something outside? He nodded. They stepped into the backyard again near the frozen garden. I need to record something, she said. He blinked. Record? Voices? Conversations? Dylan hesitated. Is this about what I said the other day? The loan. It's worse, Eleanor whispered. They forged my signature on refinance documents. They're planning something, I don't know what, but I need evidence. Dylan exhaled. Jesus. She looked at him. Her voice was steady. Can you help me? He nodded. Yeah, of course. They went back inside Dylan, pretending to adjust his phone charger in his delivery bag, and once in her room he sat beside her and helped install the app. Voice activated, he said. Starts recording when it hears anything above a whisper. Everything gets uploaded to the cloud encrypted. You just keep it near you. I'll set it to upload to a private email. Just make sure they don't find the app. Eleanor smiled faintly. I'm old, not stupid. Dylan chuckled, but there was worry in his eyes. Before he left, he placed one of the delivery cups in her hand. One real latte for Denver's toughest lady. She took it. Thanks, Dylan. As he walked away, she called after him. Why are you helping me? He turned his breath a white cloud in the winter air. Because my grandma raised me too. And if anyone had tried this kind of thing with her, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. The door shut quietly behind her. Eleanor stood in the foyer for a long time, staring at the empty hallway. And then she walked back to her room. She slid the printed pages she'd photographed into the folds of an old hardback copy of Jane Eyre, tucked deep inside her dresser. One storm was coming outside, but another darker one was already growing inside these walls, and she was no longer afraid of it. The hallway was colder at night. The polished floors stretched long and empty, the house steeped in darkness, except for the faint glow under the office door. Eleanor had grown used to the rhythm of the house, the schedules, the footsteps, the voices rising and falling through thin walls. But tonight, something pulled her from bed. It was nearly 1 a.m. when she opened her door just wide enough to peer through the crack. She moved in silence, slippered feet making no sound on the hardwood. Down the corridor, the office door stood open just a hair. Light spilled out in a thin beam. Voices flickered through. She's been poking around again, Amanda whispered sharp. Yesterday I caught her near the cabinet where we keep the insurance docs. You shouldn't leave them where she can reach them, Tyler replied, tense. She's not senile, Amanda snapped. She notices things. That's the problem, Tyler said. We're on a timeline here. The second refinance has to go through before the end of the month or the bank pulls the pre-approval. And you still need her signature. A pause. Unless, Tyler muttered, we leverage the medical clause we added last year. Claim cognitive decline, early onset dementia. Say she's unstable. That's your solution, Amanda hissed. Have my own mother declared incompetent? Tyler didn't answer right away. Then he said slowly, if she refuses to sign, we have to make the decision for her. It's our future on the line. Eleanor stood frozen outside the door, the words soaking into her like acid. Refinance, again. Signatures, clauses, incompetent. She backed away one careful step at a time, heart hammering against her ribs. That was when she heard it, a faint, almost imperceptible sniffle. She turned. Lily, The child stood barefoot at the end of the hallway, clutching her stuffed rabbit eyes wide and shimmering in the dark. "Sweetheart," Eleanor started. "I heard them," Lily whispered. Eleanor moved to her, wrapped her arms around the trembling little body. "I wasn't trying to listen," Lily said. "I was going to get water. I didn't mean to." Her voice broke into tears. "But they're lying. They're using you." Eleanor held her tighter, smoothing the girl's hair. "I know, baby, I know." Lily sobbed into her chest. "Mom's doing something bad, Nana, and I don't know why." Eleanor kissed the top of her head. "It's not your fault." "I don't want to live here anymore," Lily whispered. "It doesn't feel safe." Eleanor felt something shift in her chest, like a door locked for too long, suddenly blown open by the wind. This wasn't just about her anymore. She guided Lily back to her room, tucked her in, and stayed until the girl's breathing slowed into sleep. But Eleanor did not close her eyes. She sat in the darkness, listening to the heater hum and crack, watching the shadows move against the walls. By morning, she knew what had to be done. At 9:10, she waited at the edge of the driveway, clutching her scarf tighter around her throat. The wind bit hard, slicing down the street, rattling the mailbox. Her fingers ached from the cold, but she didn't go back inside. Dylan's van pulled up just after 9:15. He stepped out, half smiling. "Standing out here in this weather, you planning to freeze me into a latte?" "Walk with me," Eleanor said, voice low. They walked the length of the block, Eleanor keeping her eyes ahead. "They're going to try to get me to sign again," she said. "Or worse, have me declared unfit." Dylan's brows furrowed. "On what grounds?" "They've added a clause in the documents, something about diminished capacity. Tyler's been prepping Amanda to use it if I resist." "Jesus," he muttered, that's criminal." Eleanor turned to face him, her breath visible between them. "Then help me prove it." Dylan hesitated. "You already have recordings. You've got the app set." "I need more," she said. "I need evidence of intent, documents, a timeline, anything that shows they plan to forge, deceive, manipulate." He rubbed his jaw. "You want me to help you trap them?" "I want justice," she said, eyes hard. "And I want my granddaughter out of that house." Dylan nodded slowly. "What's the plan?" Eleanor drew a folded piece of paper from her coat pocket. "There's a room on the second floor they think I don't know about. They keep documents there. They think I can't do stairs anymore." She smirked. "They've forgotten I hiked Mount Columbia twice." Dylan blinked. "Wait, you hiked?" "Focus," she said, handing him the paper. "This is the layout. There's a crawl space from Lily's closet that leads to a utility door behind the upstairs guest bath. They keep the second set of files there." Dylan's eyes widened. "You've been planning this." "I've been surviving this," Eleanor corrected. "There's a difference." He folded the paper and tucked it into his coat. "I'll come by tomorrow," he said, "with something better than coffee." As they walked back, Eleanor's spine straightened. Inside the house, Amanda sat at the kitchen counter, scrolling her tablet. "You're out early," she said, eyeing her mother's flushed cheeks. "Just needed air," Eleanor replied evenly, "and conversation that doesn't smell like roasted beans." Amanda gave a half laugh. "Everything okay?" Eleanor smiled. "Never better." Eleanor spent the next morning wrapped in an afghan on the couch, her skin paler than usual, her eyes deliberately dimmed. She had skipped breakfast. She had left the dishes untouched. Her hands trembled just enough to seem involuntary. When Amanda passed through the living room, she tilted her head and studied her mother for a second. "You okay, Mom?" Eleanor offered a weak smile. "Just a bit off. Maybe something I ate." Amanda frowned. "Do you want me to call the doctor?" "No need." Eleanor's voice was quiet, raspy. "It'll pass." Amanda hovered a moment longer before walking off. Eleanor remained still until she heard the front door close and the car back down the driveway. Then carefully she sat up. Dylan arrived 20 minutes later, earlier than usual, carrying a brown paper bag and an old-looking picture frame. "It's in here," he said, his voice low as he entered. They moved quickly. Eleanor guided him to the living room while glancing up at the camera in the corner. She gave a small cough, a whisper of performance, and slumped back onto the armchair near the window. Dylan placed the picture on the side table and pulled the real family portrait off the wall, a smiling image of Amanda and Tyler and Lily standing in front of Juniper and Sage's cafe. The fake warmth in their eyes made Eleanor's skin crawl. He flipped it over, removed the back panel, and inserted a thin rectangular strip of black plastic, just smaller than a lipstick tube. Motion-triggered wide-angle, Dylan said, working fast. Backs up to cloud storage and a secure drive I keep. No red lights, no sound. Looks like a harmless wall hanger. He clipped the back panel closed, rehung the frame, and stepped back. To anyone else, it was just a family photo. To them, it was a silent witness. Dylan leaned toward her. "You're sure you want to go through with this?" Eleanor didn't hesitate. "They already decided what I'm worth. I'm just giving them the chance to say it on record." He nodded. "I'll be outside at noon tomorrow. Text me the moment something shifts." She smiled faintly. They won't be able to help themselves. And she was right. That afternoon, Tyler returned earlier than usual. Amanda wasn't with him. Eleanor was sitting exactly where she had been all morning, a blanket over her knees, a teacup untouched beside her. "Hey, Eleanor," Tyler said, voice thick with forced kindness. "You feeling better?" She looked up at him, eyes watery, still foggy. He nodded slowly, crossed the room, and sat across from her. The tablet was already in his hands. "You know, I've been thinking," he began. "This place, it's a lot of work. It's big. Utilities, property tax, insurance, it all adds up." Eleanor nodded absently. And with the cafe expanding, he continued, "We really want to be sure everything's stable financially. You understand?" She waited, let the silence hang. Then came the folder. He pulled it from his leather briefcase, placed it gently on the coffee table. "These are just some refinancing papers. Minor adjustments, just to make things easier for everyone. You're still on the deed, still secure. We just shift a few things to leverage the house for better terms." Eleanor looked at the folder like it was made of glass. "Am I still the owner?" she asked softly. "Of course. This is just administrative. You'll barely notice any difference." She reached for it, fingers trembling slightly, not out of fear, but as part of the act. Tyler watched her carefully. "Amanda wanted to go over it with you, but she's been slammed at the shop. I figured I could help." Eleanor opened the folder slowly. Pages of legalese, her name in bold, loan amounts larger than before, signatures marked with sticky flags. "I don't know," she whispered. "It's a lot." "It's just paperwork." "Seems important." He smiled tightly. "Trust me, it's routine. We've already cleared the preliminary approvals." Eleanor looked up at him, met his eyes. "I want to read it," she said. Tyler blinked. "You can. Give me a few days, quiet time, to go through it. I don't want to rush." A pause. Something behind his smile cracked. "We're kind of on a timeline," he said, voice still smooth. "It's just bank windows, you know how it is. These offers don't last. I'd still like to read it." Eleanor replied, folding the papers back into the folder and placing it neatly on the table. Tyler sat back. His fingers drummed on the armrest. He exhaled through his nose, long and sharp. "Sure," he said finally. "Of course, take your time." But his jaw had clenched, and in his eyes the performance had begun to slip. The next morning, Amanda cornered Eleanor in the kitchen. "You asked to keep the papers," she said, keeping her voice low but firm. Eleanor was buttering toast. She didn't look up. "I said I'd read them, that's all." Amanda crossed her arms. "We really need this to go through, Mom. You said you wanted to help." Eleanor turned toward her. "And I will," she said, "if it feels right." Amanda didn't speak. She stood there for a long moment, face unreadable. Then she turned and walked away. That night the house pulsed with unease. Eleanor sat in the living room beneath the watchful eye of the hidden camera, pretending to read a gardening magazine. Tyler paced the hall behind her, talking on the phone in low, clipped tones. "She's stalling." "No, she didn't sign." "Yes, I've tried. If we don't file by Monday, it's over. I'm not going back to zero because some old woman forgot how leverage works." Click. The call ended. Eleanor didn't move. She waited for him to come in, waited for the push. But he didn't. Instead, she heard the unmistakable sound of the briefcase being zipped shut with force, the door of the office slamming a beat too hard. Tension had entered the bloodstream of the house. Amanda barely spoke to her during breakfast. Tyler only nodded. They were unraveling, and Eleanor. She kept her performance steady. She coughed at the right times, fumbled a spoon, spoke slower, asked Amanda to repeat herself, let her hands shake just enough to be noticed. She knew what they were thinking. "She's slipping, finally. Let her sign. She won't know what she's doing." But she did. Every word, every glance, every lie. The walls might be watching, but so was she. And now so was the camera, recording it all. The house was silent the morning Eleanor vanished. Amanda called twice from the kitchen, waiting for the slow shuffle of slippers down the hallway. Nothing. No door creak. No cough. No whispered, "Coming, dear." By the third time, Amanda marched to her mother's room, irritation simmering beneath concern. She pushed the door open. The bed was made. The nightstand lamp still warm to the touch, as if recently switched off. The teacup from last night had been rinsed and left upside down on a saucer. The closet door hung open, a hanger swinging lazily in empty space between sweaters. No suitcase. No note. Amanda froze. For a moment the air went still. Then she spun and stormed through the hallway, opening every door, calling Eleanor's name with increasing sharpness. The guest room empty. The laundry room silent. The basement cold and undisturbed. "She's not here," Amanda barked down the hall to Tyler, who emerged bleary-eyed from their bedroom. "What do you mean?" "She's gone. Her coat is gone. Her boots, too." Tyler blinked the gravity, taking a moment to land. "I don't know. I went to check on her just now." "She didn't come to breakfast." "Did she leave a note?" No, Amanda's voice cracked. Tyler stepped into Eleanor's room, scanning it with clinical coldness. She took her phone. Amanda checked the dresser. No, her phone's still here. Tyler paused, thinking fast. "Do you think she left on foot?" Amanda blinked at him. "Where would she go? She can barely walk to the mailbox in winter." Tyler paced. Okay, don't panic." "I'm not panicking," Amanda snapped. "But if something's happened..." He cut her off, eyes narrowing. "We don't call the police." Amanda looked at him, horrified. "Are you out of your mind? She's an old woman. She could be..." "She's not dead," Tyler said flatly. "And if we call the police, questions get asked. They'll want to know about the cameras, the financials, the papers you tried to rush." Amanda's face went white. He continued. "You want them digging through our loan files, tracing the signatures." Silence fell between them. Amanda swallowed hard. "So what do we do?" "We wait," Tyler said. "We give it 24 hours. If she hasn't shown up by then, we make a wellness call, say she's been mentally declining, that it's not unusual for her to wander." Amanda's jaw clenched. "You're insane." "No," he said, staring out the front window into the white blanketed street. "I'm realistic." They didn't know it yet, but Eleanor was already miles away. In the attic apartment above Dylan's cousin's garage, she sat at a kitchen table with a mug of tea in her hand, hot, spiced, unhurried. The snowstorm from the night before had passed. Sunlight now gleamed against the icicles hanging from the roofline. Dylan sat across from her, his phone on speaker. "So, Mrs. Bates, I've reviewed the materials Mr. Harlan sent me," came a crisp voice, female, professional, calm. "The recordings are clear. The forged documents, the fraudulent use of your name, and the covert surveillance cameras all fall under Colorado's elder financial abuse statutes." Eleanor's fingers tightened around her mug. The woman continued. "You have strong standing to file a restraining order request, a conservatorship revocation, and submit a formal complaint for elder exploitation." Eleanor exhaled slowly. "What do I need to do?" "I've already drafted the injunction paperwork. You'll sign at the courthouse this afternoon. We'll request emergency protection, including temporary control over the property and a freeze on any financial transactions tied to your name. If the judge approves, your daughter and son-in-law will be legally barred from accessing your accounts or assets." "And Lily?" Eleanor asked. The lawyer hesitated. "That's more delicate. She's a minor. Custody isn't the immediate path here. But if we prove the home environment is unsafe, there may be intervention opportunities." Dylan leaned in. "She's scared of them. That girl's not safe there." "I'll file a secondary petition for social services review," the lawyer replied. "But let's begin with reclaiming your legal autonomy." Eleanor's hands stopped trembling. "Thank you," she said. The lawyer's voice softened. "You've done the right thing. Not everyone has the courage to stand up." When the call ended, Dylan sat back. "You okay?" Eleanor nodded, but her gaze was far away, fixed on the frozen skyline beyond the window. "I never thought I'd be here," she murmured. "In Denver, in hiding, filing charges against my own daughter, fighting to protect my name like it's something breakable." Dylan poured more tea into her cup. "It's not breakable. It's yours." They sat in silence for a moment. Then she said, "I thought giving Amanda everything I had would make her feel loved." Dylan looked at her. "It's not about what you gave, it's about what they took." That afternoon at the Jefferson County Courthouse, Eleanor Bates walked through the glass doors with Dylan beside her. She wore a thick coat, her scarf tight around her throat gloves that had once belonged to Harold. She carried no purse, no photos, no papers. Everything was in her lawyer's hands now. The clerk at the desk handed her a pen. She signed her name with calm, deliberate strokes. Not forged, not coerced. Hers. The judge would review the petition by morning. A court investigator had already been assigned. Tyler and Amanda would receive a summons within 24 hours. Eleanor stepped back outside into the cold air, her breath rising like smoke. For the first time in months, she felt tall again. Later that night, Dylan dropped her off and stood by the car as she climbed the steps to the attic apartment. Before she went in, she turned to him. "You saved my life," she said. He shook his head. "You were never lost, just surrounded." She smiled, and for the first time in a long, long while it reached her eyes. The courtroom was quiet, save for the soft rustle of paper and the occasional tap of a keyboard. Outside, Denver's skyline was bathed in mid-morning frost, the kind that clung to windows and turned car roofs to silver. Inside, though, everything was sharp and exposed. Amanda sat stiffly at the defense table, her posture too perfect, like she was holding herself together by sheer will. Her lawyer, an expensive-looking man in a navy suit, flipped through documents with the calm detachment of someone who knew how to spin. Beside Amanda, Tyler shifted constantly, tapping one heeled jaw clenched so tightly it seemed to grind. Eleanor sat across the aisle, flanked by her attorney and Dylan, who hadn't said much since they arrived, but whose presence anchored her like stone. Her coat was folded neatly over the back of her chair. Her scarf was wrapped with purpose. She didn't shake. Not yet. Then the judge entered. Everyone stood. The proceedings began with formalities. Case number, charges, statements from both sides. The room was mostly empty, save for a clerk, a court reporter, and Lily, small and wide-eyed, in the back row, seated beside a woman from Child Welfare Services, who watched her with quiet sympathy. Then came the evidence. Your Honor. Eleanor's attorney began standing with deliberate calm. We would like to submit audiovisual materials demonstrating a pattern of coercive financial manipulation, surveillance, and intent to defraud. The judge, mid-60s, composed with tired eyes and a sharp tongue, nodded. Proceed. The courtroom lights dimmed. A screen flickered to life. The first clip played audio captured from the hallway vent. Unless we leverage the medical clause we added last year, say she's unstable. Amanda's voice. Have my own mother declared incompetent. Tyler. If she refuses to sign, we make the decision for her. Tyler flinched visibly in his seat. Amanda's lawyer stood. Your Honor. These recordings were made without knowledge or consent. Colorado law allows for one-party consent in private residences. Eleanor's attorney countered. The judge raised a hand. Overruled. Continue. Next came the video. Footage from the hidden camera Dylan had placed behind the living room portrait. Tyler sliding papers across the table. Eleanor, trembling fingers, lifting the folder. You're still on the deed. Just routine. I want to read it. Eleanor's voice echoed in the courtroom. Tyler's expression hardened on screen. We're kind of on a timeline. The tension in the room grew like fog. The final clip was quiet. Eleanor, sitting alone, unaware she was being recorded, whispering into the silence. If I disappear, this house is the reason. Amanda put her hand to her mouth. Tyler stared at the table, knuckles white. When the lights came back on, the silence in the courtroom was suffocating. Then Lily stood. Her voice came out small but steady. That's what I heard. I didn't know what it meant then, but I do now. Her mother turned to her, lips parting. Lily, don't. But Lily was crying now, her cheeks flushed and angry. You lied. You told me Nana was confused. You told me she didn't know what she was saying. But I heard you. I heard both of you. Amanda reached out instinctively, but Lily took a step back. The judge looked between them, expression unreadable. Then she turned to Eleanor. Mrs. Bates, do you wish to make a statement before I deliver my ruling? Eleanor stood slowly. Her knees ached. Her back resisted. But she rose anyway, her hands unclenching at her sides. I came here today not for revenge, she began, her voice low, weathered. Not even for money. I gave my daughter everything I had. My home, my savings, my trust. She paused. I raised her to believe that family meant sacrifice, that love wasn't conditional, that when you gave all. And I did. Her voice wavered, but she didn't stop. I'm not here to take back what I gave. I'm here to reclaim what was taken without consent. My voice, my dignity, my right to say no. She looked toward Amanda. I don't want your cafe, I don't want your house, but I will not be erased from my own life. A hush fell. The judge leaned back. After a long moment she spoke. The court finds sufficient evidence of financial coercion and elder abuse under Colorado Statute 18 to 6.5, 103. Given the submitted recordings and corroborating testimony, the court grants a temporary injunction freezing all financial activity tied to Eleanor Bates's name. Tyler exhaled sharply through his nose. In addition, the judge continued all rights of access to assets, properties, and authorizations formerly granted to Amanda Bates Richmond and Tyler Richmond are hereby suspended pending further investigation. Eleanor didn't move. She didn't smile. She just stood still and closed her eyes for half a breath. You will be assigned a financial advocate, the judge said. Should you choose, you may select a legal conservator of your own. A full evidentiary hearing is scheduled in 6 weeks. Until then, this court recognizes Eleanor Bates as sole legal guardian of her estate. The gavel came down. Amanda collapsed into her chair. Tyler didn't look at her. Lily stood alone in the back row, her hands clasped tightly at her sides. Eleanor turned her face unreadable and walked out of the courtroom without a single backward glance. Outside, the cold didn't bite anymore, not like it used to. The backlash came quickly. Within 48 hours of the court ruling, local media picked up the story. A respected elderly woman manipulated by her daughter and son-in-law, tricked into signing away her financial independence. The headlines were ruthless. Cafe owners exploit elderly mother in financial power play. Family betrayal behind the beans. Juniper and sage scandal shocks community. The first reporters showed up outside Amanda and Tyler's suburban house before sunrise. By the end of the week, someone had spray-painted thieves across the cafe's back wall. Inside the shop, once bustling with regulars and early morning freelancers, tables sat empty. The plant wall wilted under the weight of silence. Orders slowed. Staff began calling out sick or resigning entirely. Amanda sat behind the register one gray afternoon. Her face drawn, her phone vibrating non-stop with calls from unlisted numbers. Online reviews flipped from praise to venom overnight. Words like exploiters, fraudsters, and predators filled the comment sections. Tyler suggested rebranding. Amanda said nothing. No apology statement was released, no public comment made, because Eleanor had said all that needed saying in the courtroom with her quiet refusal to be erased. And she meant it. When Amanda tried to call her a week later, Eleanor let the phone ring. When a letter came in the mail, she left it unopened. She didn't want revenge, but she also didn't want a forced reconciliation written in panic or shame. She wanted peace, so she sold the remaining property. Still in her name, an old savings cabin on the edge of Clear Creek County, barely worth the paper it was titled on, and used the proceeds to pack her life into 4 boxes and leave Denver for good. She didn't tell anyone where she was going, just that she was done being someone's backup plan. 2 weeks later, a narrow road curved through the white-capped Tetons and brought her into Jackson Hole, Wyoming. It had been Harold's favorite place. They had visited once every fall during their marriage. He had always talked about retiring there to a quiet town that knows how to sit still, he used to say. Now Eleanor was here alone, but not afraid. She rented a small 2-bedroom above an antique store and began spending her mornings walking through the village, learning every slope and corner. The quiet helped her breathe. The cold was familiar. And then one day she saw it. The storefront was chipped and faded, a squat little building near the edge of town with dusty windows and an old wooden sign that read Heirloom Threads. It had been closed for years, for lease. Inside, rows of sagging shelves and abandoned display tables stood in stillness as if waiting for new hands. Eleanor pressed her palm to the glass and imagined books instead of bolts of fabric. A soft lamp in the corner. A kettle on a back shelf. That night she called the landlord. The lease was modest. He waived the deposit when he heard her story. 6 weeks later, she stood in the doorway as a new sign was hung above the door. Winter Books by Eleanor. The paint was navy blue, the lettering hand-carved by a retired craftsman who lived next door. She'd paid him with tea lemon bread and a worn copy of Steinbeck's East of Eden. Inside, the shelves had been scrubbed clean and restocked with second-hand novels, poetry, and the occasional memoir from locals. She added armchairs in the corners, thick rugs to soak in the cold, and an old turntable that played soft jazz or classical vinyls depending on her mood. Her first customer was a widower who had lost his wife last spring. He stayed an hour, bought nothing, returned the next day and brought cookies. The second customer was a little boy who asked if she had books about polar bears. She pulled 3 from the children's shelf, read the first one aloud, and sent him home with all of them. And then one snowy Friday afternoon, Lily walked through the front door. She was wrapped in a blue coat scarf too big for her small frame. Her cheeks were flushed, but her eyes were calm. Eleanor stood frozen for a moment. Then Lily ran straight into her arms. "I missed you," she whispered. Eleanor held her tightly, her throat closing. Lily pulled back just enough to say, "Mom said I could come stay with you on weekends. If you want me." Eleanor smiled, tears catching in her lashes. "Of course I want you." They spent that weekend baking lemon muffins in the small upstairs kitchen and building snowmen in the courtyard behind the shop. At night, Lily curled up on the old couch beneath the window while Eleanor read to her from a copy of The Secret Garden. The world outside had shifted, grown louder, meaner, quicker, but inside time moved like it used to. On Sunday morning, Lily stood beside her grandmother as Eleanor opened the shop for the day. Snowflakes drifted in the air. The bell above the door jingled as a young couple walked in, brushing snow from their jackets. Lily looked up at her grandmother. "Do you think people can change?" Eleanor smiled. "I think people can learn." Lily nodded. "Even moms." Eleanor placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Especially moms." The girl leaned against her, and together they watched as the morning light spread across the pages of the waiting books. Eleanor had lost a house, a daughter, a fortune, but she had found herself, and in the stillness of that mountain town she began again, this time on her own terms. Winter Books by Eleanor wasn't just a store anymore. It had become something else entirely. It began with quiet regulars. A retired teacher named Mrs. Holloway who came in every Tuesday to borrow poetry books and sit near the front window with a cup of chamomile. A grumpy Vietnam veteran who never spoke a word, but left paperbacks in a neat stack by the fireplace, and always returned the next week for more. Then came the others. The widow who had lost her husband 2 winters back and didn't know what to do with the 300 p.m. silence in her house. The man who played cello in his garage because his kids didn't like the sound. The former librarian who still alphabetized things in her dreams. They came alone at first, cautious, stiff, unsure of the rules. Eleanor welcomed them with warm tea and a nod. No questions asked, no required purchases, just warmth, quiet, and a sense that here within these 4 walls no one had to explain who they had been. She added a second couch near the front, then a long communal reading table beneath the bay window. She rearranged the shelves so that the large print books were easier to reach. She brought in a kettle with a spout that didn't require wrist strength, stocked decaf in the tin labeled Evening Blend, and pinned a new handwritten note to the back door. "You are home here." One Wednesday morning, as she was restocking the historical fiction section, the bell over the door jingled. An elderly man stood there, tall and hollow-shouldered, with a weathered cap and a wrapped object in his arms. His cheeks were pink from wind, his eyes gray like the skies over the Tetons. "You, Eleanor?" he asked. "I am," she replied, wiping her hands on her apron. He stepped forward and slowly unwrapped the bundle in his hands. It was a guitar, an old acoustic Gibson, the kind built when craftsmanship still meant something. Its wood was scratched and worn, its strings a little loose. "It was my wife's," he said quietly. "She used to play every Sunday after church." Eleanor's voice softened. "It's beautiful." "She passed in October," he said, running his hand along the neck. "I thought maybe someone here might want to hear it again." Eleanor didn't speak for a moment. Then she stepped aside and pointed toward the fireplace. He nodded, walked over, and gently laid it in the stand she used for display books. It looked at home there, like it had always been waiting for this place. "What was her name?" she asked. "Frances," he said. "She liked books with sad endings." Eleanor smiled. "We have plenty." He chuckled. I'll come by and play it sometime if you don't mind. I'd be honored. When he left, she sat on the couch beside the guitar, placed her hand over the strings, and felt them hum softly beneath her fingers. Later that afternoon, while sorting through a donation box of used children's books, the front door swung open again, this time with familiar laughter. Dylan walked in wearing his same beat-up winter coat, snow on his boots, and a crooked grin on his face. Well, he said, "Look at you." Eleanor stood up straight, dusting off her hands. "Don't just stand there letting in the cold. Come inside before my tea freezes." He laughed and shut the door behind him. "I brought you something," he said, pulling a small wrapped rectangle from his backpack. Eleanor raised a brow. "If it's another copy of Walden, I swear." "Better," he said, unwrapping the paper. It was a photograph framed simply in oak. In it, Eleanor sat with Lily in the sunroom of the bookstore, both of them laughing over a stack of picture books. Lily's hair was half up, Eleanor's eyes bright with something soft and eternal. She took the frame with careful hands. "I didn't even know you took this," she whispered. Dylan shrugged. "I didn't want you to pose. I just wanted you to see what you look like when you're safe." Eleanor's throat tightened. She placed the frame on the front desk beside a stack of bookmarks she'd made from pressed leaves and lace. For a moment they stood in silence. "People talk about you," Dylan said. "At the post office, the co-op, even the mayor mentioned the bookstore." Eleanor raised an eyebrow. "Should I be worried?" He smiled. "Only if you hate being called a legend." She chuckled, then looked around the shop. "It's not much," she said. "It's everything," he replied. She didn't answer. She couldn't. Instead, she walked to the front window where the snow had started again. Light flakes floating like ash through the pale light. Behind her, the fire crackled. The guitar gleamed. The scent of cinnamon and ink and something like hope filled the room. She looked over her shoulder at Dylan. "You're staying for tea, right?" He nodded. "Of course." She turned back toward the glass. Outside, two elderly women walked by, one pointing toward the bookstore, the other nodding. Eleanor smiled. And in her eyes, bright behind the years, behind all the winter and betrayal and healing, there was a glint of something rare. A kind of peace, a kind of happiness that asked for nothing. Because she had built it herself. Because it belonged to no one else. And because it had taken her a lifetime to know that was enough. The snow fell thick that evening like it had waited all season for one last descent. It covered the streets of Jackson Hole in a hush, blanketing rooftops and benches and bare branches with soft, endless white. Outside the windows of winter books, the world was vanishing soundless, suspended. But inside, the fire crackled gently in the hearth, casting golden light across shelves and worn pages. Eleanor sat in her usual armchair, a wool blanket over her knees, a book open in her lap. She wasn't reading anymore. Her eyes had drifted from the words, but her fingers still held the spine as if the story mattered. Next to her, curled like a kitten, was Lily. Her head rested on Eleanor's hip, one hand clinging to the sleeve of her cardigan. She had fallen asleep an hour ago, her breath warm and steady, cheeks flushed from hot cocoa and laughter. Eleanor looked down at her and smiled the kind of smile no camera could ever capture, the kind only memory could hold. She reached for the side table and pulled a letter from its drawer. The envelope was thick, hand-addressed, already stamped. Inside was a single handwritten page. She had rewritten it 3 times already. "Dear Miss Adler, I am writing to formally withdraw the criminal complaint against Amanda Bates Richmond and Tyler Richmond, contingent upon the immediate full restitution of all assets and the legal severance of their ownership claims regarding 55 Crestview Lane and all associated accounts. I am not interested in court victories, only closure. If these terms are honored within 14 days, I will not pursue prosecution. This is not forgiveness. It is release. Sincerely, Eleanor M. Bates." She folded the page slowly and slipped it back into the envelope. Her fingers trembled, not with fear, but with finality. She would mail it tomorrow. Let Amanda choose whether she wanted to be free of this weight or carry it for the rest of her life. Lily stirred slightly beside her, murmured something about snowflakes, then returned to sleep. Eleanor leaned back and closed her eyes, letting the fire warm her bones, letting the snow whisper against the windows like a lullaby. The bell above the shop door jingled. She opened her eyes. The door hadn't been locked yet. She hadn't expected anyone. The sign still read "Open though evening" had long passed. Amanda stood in the entryway. She looked like someone who had been driving for hours. Her coat was wet with melting snow. Her eyes were red. In her hands was a crumpled envelope. She stood there for a long moment just staring. Then without a word she dropped to her knees. The sound was so soft it barely rose above the firelight, but it broke something in the air. Amanda bowed her head and wept. Eleanor didn't move. She didn't speak. Amanda whispered, "I lost everything. Tyler's gone. The business," she choked. "I was wrong. I know I was. But I didn't know how to stop. And I didn't know how to ask for your hand without thinking of what I already took." Lily stirred, then sat up slowly. She blinked at her mother, then looked at her grandmother. "Nana." Eleanor gently touched Lily's shoulder. "Go upstairs, sweetheart." Lily hesitated. "Please." The girl rose silently and walked to the back, glancing once more at her mother before disappearing into the stairwell. Amanda remained kneeling. "I'm not asking for anything," she said. "I just needed to say sorry. In person." Eleanor stood slowly. She walked to the door, her steps firm but unhurried. She reached for the lock. Amanda looked up, tears running down her cheeks. "Please, Mom." Eleanor didn't answer. She simply turned the sign to closed and shut the door behind her. The click of the lock was louder than thunder. Outside, the snow had thickened, dancing like ash in the glow of the street lamp. She stood there a moment, watching her daughter's shadow retreat beyond the frosted glass. No anger, no triumph, just stillness. She turned away, stepped down onto the sidewalk, the snow crunching beneath her boots. The town was quiet, the mountains hidden in white. The night wrapped around her like a woolen shawl. She lifted her face to the sky. Snowflakes kissed her lashes, her cheeks, her mouth. She closed her eyes and let it fall. And for the first time in years, maybe decades, Eleanor smiled. Not because the past was gone, but because it had been seen. Not because she'd won, but because she had endured. And because this time, this winter, she was no longer waiting for warmth to find her. She had built it herself. And the cold didn't scare her anymore. That winter was not cold, not anymore.